We've all heard it said before. Cancer is a disease of modern life, a disease of pollution, processed food, cigarettes, plastics, and stress, a punishment for the world we built. The implication is comforting. In a strange way, it suggests that somewhere in our past, there was a golden age, a time before chemicals, a time when the human body simply didn't get cancer. But is that actually true? In 2010, a team of researchers from the University of Manchester made a claim that spread across headlines worldwide. After studying hundreds of Egyptian mummies, ancient literature, and animal fossils, they concluded that cancer was almost entirely absent from the ancient world, and that it might be, in their words, a man-made disease. It's a powerful story. It's also, as we're about to find out, dangerously incomplete, because while that Manchester study was making headlines, other scientists on a different continent were digging up something that would tell a very different story. Bones far older than any Egyptian mummy, bones that would push the evidence for cancer back not thousands of years, but millions. So, which is it? Was cancer rare in the ancient world, a byproduct of our unnatural modern lives? Or has this disease been quietly present in our bodies, and the bodies of our ancestors, since long before humans even existed? To find out, we need to dig through fossils, unwrap mummies, and follow the evidence all the way back to the dawn of the human lineage itself. Let's start with the claim that made global headlines. In 2010, Professor Rosalie David and Professor Michael Zimmerman published a review in the journal Nature Reviews Cancer, examining evidence of cancer across ancient Egyptian and Greek remains, along with older fossil and literary records. Their findings seemed striking. Despite examining tissue samples from hundreds of Egyptian mummies, bodies that had been deliberately preserved through mummification, researchers found only a single confirmed case of cancer, a case of rectal cancer in an ordinary individual who had lived in the Dakhla oasis roughly 1600 to 1800 years ago. This mattered because mummification, in theory, should preserve tumors just as well as, or even better than, healthy tissue. If cancer had been common in ancient Egypt, the researchers argued we should be finding it constantly. Instead, they found almost nothing. The researchers extended their search beyond mummies, scanning ancient Egyptian and Greek medical texts and literature for descriptions of tumors and cancer-like symptoms. Again, references were scarce. Based on this pattern, the team concluded that cancer rates have risen dramatically since the Industrial Revolution, and that the disease may be overwhelmingly linked to modern pollution, industrial toxins, and lifestyle changes rather than being a natural part of the human condition throughout history. It's an appealing narrative. It suggests a clean, pre-industrial past, and it puts the blame for cancer squarely on modern civilization. This idea spread quickly through news outlets around the world, often stripped of nuance, boiled down to a single dramatic headline: cancer is man-made. But headlines rarely tell the whole story, and in the years since, this conclusion has run into serious, science-based pushback rooted in far older evidence than any Egyptian tomb could offer. Here's the problem with concluding that ancient people simply didn't get cancer. Absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And there are very good reasons why ancient cancer might be underdetected, even if it was actually present. First, consider lifespan. Cancer risk rises sharply with age because cancer is largely a disease of accumulated cellular damage over time. Most ancient populations had dramatically shorter average lifespans than people today, largely due to high infant mortality, infections, injuries, and lack of modern medicine. Many ancient individuals simply didn't live long enough to develop the cancers that typically strike people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. That doesn't mean their bodies were incapable of developing cancer. It means fewer of them survived long enough to get there. Second, consider preservation and detection. Most cancers begin in soft tissue, organs, glandular tissue, blood, which decomposes rapidly after death and almost never survives in the archaeological record. Only cancers that spread to bone, or originate in bone itself, tend to leave detectable evidence thousands of years later. This means researchers examining skeletons are only ever seeing a small fraction of the cancers that may have actually existed. The disease is systematically underrepresented in the fossil and mummy record, regardless of how common it actually was. Third, diagnostic tools available to researchers studying ancient remains, especially decades ago, were far more limited than what's available today. Modern imaging, histological techniques, and genetic analysis have only recently become advanced enough to detect subtle signs of neoplastic disease in old bone that earlier researchers may have simply missed or misclassified. So when critics looked at the Manchester study, they didn't see proof that cancer was absent from the ancient world. They saw a study limited by small sample sizes, short ancient lifespans, and the simple biological reality that most cancer doesn't fossilize. And soon, evidence would emerge that would challenge the modern disease theory in the most dramatic way possible. If cancer really were purely a product of modern human civilization, we would expect to find zero evidence of it anywhere in the deep fossil record. No ancient animals, no dinosaurs, nothing before industrialization. But that is not even close to what scientists have actually found. The oldest confirmed case of a tumor in the fossil record isn't human at all. It's a benign growth called an osteoma, discovered in a fossilized fish from North America, dated to roughly 300 million years old, long before dinosaurs, let alone humans, ever existed. Cancer has also been documented in dinosaur fossils. Scientists have identified benign tumors in Jurassic-era dinosaurs and in duck-billed dinosaurs from the Cretaceous period. Even more strikingly, researchers have identified what appears to be a case of true malignant cancer in a theropod dinosaur, the same predatory dinosaur group that includes Tyrannosaurus rex, dating back to the late Jurassic period in what is now Utah. Later still, evidence of tumors has been found in Ice Age mammoths, animals that lived and died long before any factory, any cigarette, or any industrial pollutant existed on Earth. This matters enormously for the modern disease theory because it shows that cancer is not a uniquely human problem, and it is definitely not a uniquely modern one. Cancer, at its core, is a breakdown in the normal rules that govern cell growth and division, a process that has been part of biology since complex multicellular life began. Wherever there are cells that divide and replicate, there is the potential for that process to go wrong. Dinosaurs didn't smoke cigarettes. Ancient fish didn't eat processed sugar. And yet cancer still found a way into their bodies, tens of millions of years before humans walked the Earth. Now let's bring the story back to our own evolutionary family. For years, the oldest confirmed evidence of a tumor in the hominin lineage, the broad group that includes humans and our closest evolutionary relatives, came from a Neanderthal in a cave called Krapina in modern-day Croatia. Researchers examining a collection of over 900 fragmented bones found something remarkable. A rib fragment, roughly 120,000 years old, showing clear signs of fibrous dysplasia, a bone disorder related to abnormal tissue growth. It was a stunning find. Direct physical proof that Neanderthals, an entirely different human species that vanished tens of thousands of years ago, were susceptible to the exact same kinds of tumors we see in modern humans today. Because the rib wasn't connected to a complete skeleton, researchers couldn't determine the age, sex, or exact cause of death of the individual it belonged to. But that didn't diminish the significance of the discovery. It proved something crucial. This category of disease isn't a recent invention. It was already present in our evolutionary family well before modern Homo sapiens even existed as a species, let alone before we built cities, factories, or industrial economies. For a while, the Krapina Neanderthal held the record as the oldest documented evidence of a neoplastic, tumor-related, disease in the human evolutionary line. It stood as a quiet but powerful rebuttal to the idea that cancer was purely a disease born from modern civilization. But that record, as dramatic as it was, would not stand for long. Scientists digging in a completely different part of the world were about to push the timeline back by more than 1,000,000 years. In the cradle of humankind, a region of fossil-rich caves in South Africa, researchers made a discovery that fundamentally changed our understanding of cancer's place in human history. At a site called Swartkrans, scientists uncovered a fossilized foot bone, a piece of a toe, belonging to an early hominin. Using advanced 3D imaging technology, researchers diagnosed the bone with osteosarcoma, an aggressive and malignant bone cancer that, in modern humans, most commonly affects children and young adults. The bone was dated to somewhere between 1.6 and 1.8 million years old. Scientists could not determine exactly which early human ancestor species the bone belonged to, since it wasn't connected to a full skeleton. But its diagnosis was unambiguous. This was a genuine malignant cancer embedded in the fossil record of our own evolutionary lineage at a staggering 7 million years of age, more than 14 times older than the Neanderthal rib from Croatia, and worlds older than any Egyptian mummy. In a related discovery from a nearby site called Malapa, researchers also identified a benign tumor in the vertebra of a young Australopithecus sediba individual, dated to approximately 1.98 million years old, making it at the time the oldest known tumor of any kind in the entire hominin fossil record. Taken together, these two discoveries delivered a direct challenge to the idea that cancer is a modern invention. As one of the lead researchers put it, you can follow the strictest paleo lifestyle imaginable, live in the cleanest possible environment, and the underlying biological capacity for these diseases is still ancient, woven into the story of human evolution itself. Long before agriculture, long before cities, long before anything resembling modern industry. Individual fossil discoveries make for dramatic headlines, but scientists needed something more systematic to really understand cancer's true presence throughout human history. Not just isolated case studies, but a comprehensive dataset. That's exactly what a major systematic review accomplished, compiling data from 154 separate paleopathological studies and identifying 272 individual archaeological cases, showing skeletal or soft tissue evidence of cancer, spanning an almost unimaginable range of time, from 8 million years ago all the way through to the year 1900. This research effort led to the creation of the CRAB database, Cancer Research in Ancient Bodies, an ongoing resource that continues to expand as new discoveries are made. The patterns in this data are fascinating. The evidence skews toward middle-aged and older adults, exactly what you'd expect from a disease closely linked to age and accumulated cellular damage over a lifetime. The most commonly identified evidence was cancer that had metastasized or spread into bone, which makes sense, since bone is one of the only tissues capable of preserving these signs of disease across thousands or millions of years. Most documented cases came from regions with strong traditions of archaeological excavation and preservation, particularly Northern Europe and Northern Africa. A reminder that the map of where we've found evidence of ancient cancer is shaped as much by where scientists have looked as by where the disease actually occurred. What this systematic review firmly established is something that directly challenges the modern disease narrative. Cancer's rarity in the ancient record isn't evidence that it barely existed. It's evidence of how difficult ancient cancer is to detect and preserve, a completely different conclusion than the one the world took away from the mummy headlines. If cancer really has been part of human biology for nearly 2 million years, why did the Egyptian mummy study find almost none of it? The honest answer is a combination of several very real factors, not a single simple explanation. Modern cancer rates genuinely are higher than in the ancient world, and that part of the original theory holds real merit. Industrialization did introduce new carcinogens, tobacco smoke, certain industrial chemicals, air pollution, and processed foods, all of which are linked to elevated cancer risk in the medical literature. This is a well-established, evidence-backed part of modern cancer research. But dramatically increased modern detection also plays an enormous role in why cancer feels so much more common today. Modern medicine actively screens for cancer, using tools like imaging scans, blood tests, and biopsies that simply didn't exist in the ancient world. Diseases that once went completely undiagnosed and unrecorded are now identified constantly, simply because we're looking for them with far more precision than any ancient physician ever could. And perhaps most significantly, modern humans are living dramatically longer than our ancient ancestors did on average, giving cancer, a disease driven substantially by the accumulation of cellular mutations over the span of a lifetime, far more time to develop and eventually be diagnosed in each individual person. So the real, nuanced answer sits between two extreme narratives. Cancer is not purely a modern invention, as the fossil and hominin evidence overwhelmingly proves. But cancer also isn't unaffected by modern life. Increased lifespan, new environmental exposures, and radically improved detection have all genuinely contributed to why we see so much more of it today than the archaeological record initially suggested. So, did ancient humans have cancer? Based on everything the fossil record, hominin remains, and systematic archaeological data actually show us, yes. Unquestionably, yes. From a 1.7 million year old malignant tumor in an early human ancestor's footbone to a 120 0-year-old Neanderthal rib carrying clear signs of abnormal tissue growth to hundreds of documented cases spanning nearly 2 million years of human and hominin history. The evidence tells a consistent story. Cancer has been a companion of our evolutionary lineage since long before civilization, long before agriculture, and long before a single factory ever released a single toxin into the air. What the ancient world genuinely lacked wasn't cancer itself. It was the ability to detect it, the average lifespan to develop many of its most common forms, and the exposure to certain modern environmental risk factors that undeniably do increase specific cancer rates today. In the end, the story of ancient cancer isn't really about proving one dramatic headline right and another one wrong. It's a reminder of something deeper, that disease, aging, and the biological vulnerabilities of the human body are not modern punishments. They are ancient, deeply woven threads running through the entire multi-million year story of life on this planet. Present in dinosaurs, present in mammoths, present in Neanderthals, and yes, present in our own distant ancestors, long before any of us were ever born.